So today for December I'm going to be looking at Popcorn in 1988 by Lacral Software. Lacral Software, of course, everyone knows as the people behind Grand Theft Auto 5. Of course, that's a complete lie. Lacral Software came out with absolutely bugger all else, which is really surprising because their one game, Popcorn, was really well regarded and is still loved to this day. So let's have a look at the people behind Lacral Software. Well, the graphics for Popcorn were done by a chap called Frederick Reynal, who's only credited with one other game himself, which was a game called Robix in 1986. He apparently also made some other games for the ZX81 earlier, and he made Robix when he was working in his father's shop. And it sold about 80 copies, apparently, according to Wikipedia. But those two games pretty much are the only games he's done by himself. The other person behind Popcorn is a chap called Christophe Lacaze, and it's very difficult to find any information about him. I certainly couldn't find a unique picture. All the people that I found on places like LinkedIn, for example, they didn't mention any history of game development, so I don't have a photo for him. He appears to have dropped off the scene. But going back to Frederick Reynal for a second, he's credited with quite a few games after this. He eventually went to go work for Infogrames, where he's the person who ported a game called Alpha Waves over to MS-DOS. Alpha Waves is credited as being the first ever 3D platforming game. He also went on to direct Alone in the Dark in 1992 and Little Big Adventure in 1994, which are also very well loved. But his list of credits don't end there. He's also credited as being part of Alone in the Dark 2, Fade to Black, Toy Commander, Quake 3 Arena, and Soul Bubbles on the DS. And according to the Wikipedia page about him, he set up his own company and he's working on something in the Little Big Adventure universe, but TBC. But let's go back and have a look at Popcorn itself. So here we are at the DOS prompt, the standard place to start for a DOS game. And in 1988, when Popcorn was released, there was a really wide spread of computer speeds. I mean, most people would have had something like an 8086 like we did, which would have been running at about 8 megahertz. There may have been a few people still struggling along with slower than that, but the 386 had come out in 1985, so some people would have had up to 40 megahertz, probably not quite, except for the top end people, by 1988. Quite a large spread of speeds. So Popcorn itself could run at quite everything from crushingly slow to amazingly fast. Now, later, I didn't have a thing called pop speed, which would have changed the speed. I don't know why. Luckily, it worked quite nicely on my 8086. But on earlier and later machines than that, there's the ability to speed it up or slow it down. Mostly for DOS users, you'd have needed to have used a program called MoSlow, which effectively it ran in the background as a terminate state resident program, and it just basically annoyed the processor. It kept getting the processor to do arithmetic tasks to take up some time so that other programs would run slower, hence the name MoSlow. Popcorn, however, came with a speed adjuster, which kind of counterintuitively, the higher the number, the slower it goes. But setting it to about 100 makes it work quite nicely. So this would have been about the speed of the game on my PC. I remember the introduction being very slow. As you can see, I'm running it in DOSBox X. Unfortunately, the animations are unskippable, which was always a bit of an annoyance. And as you'll have noticed, it's in French. The original two programmers being French, of course. So, if I set it to mouse, souris, and put in my name. You can have multiplayers, though not simultaneously, obviously. The only thing about this game was that even back in the day, the graphics were slow to do the unskippable bits. But the slowness kind of helps later on when things get a bit frenetic. Let's turn the sound down for me. so you don't get an echo. Anyone who's played Arkanoid will start to recognise what's about to happen. We'll get power ups coming down. Now, because this is a French game, the power ups are the first letter of the word in French, but the only one I can ever remember is L, because that's laser, which handily enough is the same word in both English and French. T, I guess, means trois balles. Now, funny thing is that I have a memory that this game played the song Popcorn, do 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 do, when you were batting the ball backwards and forwards. But I've been playing it a while this evening and it hasn't done that. And I've been looking around and other, like, I think there's a post on Vogons where someone suggests that it used to do it as well. So I'm not sure whether there were multiple versions. I think someone suggested that there was an updated version at some point. But the another French chap has taken the game in, I think, 2015 and written an updated version of the game to work on Windows. But I've just been to the site to try and get a copy of the updated version to sort of compare it, and it's not there. The site is down, so I'm hoping that there's a backup of it somewhere. But the original is still playable on DOSBox, so long as you remember to use the pop speed option. So while we're playing this, which is still going extremely slowly, and I don't know why, it usually gets a lot faster. One thing to note is a lot of people don't realise, but when most of us started playing with IBM PCs, we had already passed the monochrome and the CGA times, and we now started to get EGA and VGA. And one thing that I didn't really kind of appreciate was that this color mode in CGA, if you're not aware, was one of the early, the color graphics adapter. It was a standard for early PCs that had four color modes, black being the same in both of the color modes, but you're having red, green, and I think yellow in one, and white, cyan, and magenta in the other. At lower res, you could have up to 16 colours, but at standard CGA resolution, you could only have 4 colours. But interestingly, the magenta was apparently originally red on real CGA cards. It was a red, but most of us who played only played on EGA cards, which were working in CGA emulation, which for some reason rendered the red as magenta. I've no idea why, and the Wikipedia page suggests that it's a different type of colour palette, but a few people have said that this game should have been in red, not magenta. But if you look at some of the screenshots of this, you'll see that it's in it's red, cyan and red. Okay, well, that's enough of that. Now let's go have a look at its other big trick. So you might remember one of the things that kept Willy the Worm alive, which we were talking about yesterday, was the fact that it came with an editor, and so did Popcorn. At least the version that I had didn't come with an editor, but I think I got mine off a floppy disk, possibly an Amstrad PC magazine floppy disk, and I think they might have stripped the editor out maybe to save some space, because the editor is about half the size of the game itself. But the original actually did come with an editor. The only thing which is a little bit of a shame is that if you try and run it under DOSBox, the editor it won't let you save. That French basically means that the bad disk press a key. So what you've got to do is you have to make yourself a floppy disk image, which you can do through DOSBox X very easily. It's just a couple of clicks. So I've made myself a disk image called Popcorn, and here's one I made earlier. Okay, so if we go back to, so if we go into the editor, it allows you to edit up to 49 levels, and it's very easy to make. There we go. And then we can just disk A and then save it. There we go. Right, it's saved. If we see, there you go, dvm.bbc. Now I need to copy this. There we go. Now because I was on C drive already at that location, it's copied it in. All right, let's give it a try. Right, let's get this loaded. So you just run the game, but pass in the name of the set of new levels that you've created. I think this is going to be a bit fast, so I'll adjust the cycles down slightly. So one of the problems that you get with a lot of these earlier games is that they were made for specific processors at specific frequencies. So you need to be constantly on top of the cycles in DOSBox. You've got to remember the F12 plus minus keys to change the cycles. Basically the reason is because this is a software emulation of the PC. So unlike the Mr. FPGA, which tries to do hardware cycle perfect implementation, things like when it's doing heavy graphics stuff, obviously that would have been farmed off to the color graphics adapter or the enhanced graphics adapter at the time, but now it's all running through the same CPU on my laptop. So you tend to get slowdowns when it's doing certain things and then speed ups when it's doing something else. It's not perfect. So there's guidelines in like how many cycles will emulate a certain thing. So it says like an original 8088 PC Junior type speeds would be about 240 cycles, whereas for some reason it skips out an 8286. I don't know why, it just jumps straight to a 286 at 750 cycles. It generally tends to be about right, but as you can see, you get quite a lot of, it's a bit too fast. It should be running probably about that speed, I would say. All right, let's give it a try. And if all goes well, our levels will appear. There we go. There's my own custom level that I've overlaid on the game. So using the editor, as you can see, it's blisteringly quick. You can put your own... Oh, that's a bit too slow. And it's coming out of my speakers as well, so it's very loud. So yeah, I'd probably up the cycles a little bit. So let's say about 300. There we go. So we're now, I'd probably say around about 8086 speed at the moment. And it's running a lot faster than it would have on my PC at the time, my Amstrad 1640. Yes, lasers! Alright, let's go with the lasers. The lasers were always my favourite in Arkanoid as well. Ah, my mouse left the screen. The perils of running in a window. Okay, so there you go. Popcorn, a very cool little game. Why don't you check it out and see if you can make some cool levels and send me some pictures of the levels that you make. Cheerio.